Hi, welcome to Oma's Kitchen.
Oregano.
Let's make orange and chai tea shortbread cookies today in Oma's Kitchen. I have an old coffee grinder here, and I like to use that during the holiday season to grind up some warm spices like mulling spices or chai spices into my baked goods. I'm going to use green cardamom. I have a couple of packets of tea here. I'm actually going to just use one tea bag in this recipe. It's a chai spice tea, and I'm going to use the zest of 3 oranges. I use 8 cardamom pods, but it is a strong flavor, so the recipe calls for 4 to 8 pods, and it can be your choice depending on how much you like it. Here's what the green cardamom pods look like if you've never used them. And you break them open with the edge of a knife and pull out the little black seeds inside. Those little black seeds are what we're looking for, and you can even add them to your cookies whole. I like to grind them up. So you don't have to have a coffee grinder. You can just add them whole to your recipe if you want to. And then I just pull the green pod away from the little black seeds and keep the seeds and put them in my grinder. And I have to shake my grinder while I'm doing it, but I end up with freshly ground cardamom seeds. Now I'm going to cut open 1 tea bag. This is the chai spice tea. This is the Stash brand, but it can be any brand that you want. And you can see the dried tea and spices in there. And I'm going to add that in with my ground cardamom. And I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon to that mixture. And now I have all of the spices together for my shortbread cookies. These are 3 very, very ripe oranges, and we're going to eat those with dinner, but I want to zest them first, and I want to keep just the zest. They should be well washed and allowed to dry before you do this. The white part of the orange rind is bitter, so you only want to scrape off the orange part. Okay, let me speed this up and look like I have nervous squirrel hands while I put the recipe up here for you. I've included 1 to 2 teaspoons of optional water if you need it at the end of this recipe. It will depend on the moisture in your orange zest. This time I needed 1 teaspoon of water, but it's different every time. It's just enough to make your dough come together. The more water you add, the tougher your cookies will be. Okay, I have finished zesting the oranges, and I've cut them up and included them with grapes, and we're going to have those with dinner. Mixing the dough can be done in a food processor, a stand mixer, in a bowl by hand, or even with a hand mixer. It's up to you. I'm using my food processor, and I have shaken up my all-purpose flour to add some air to it. And now I'm going to put 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour in my food processor. Now I will add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/3 cup of cane sugar. And finally, I can add in the spices I prepared earlier. Now I will pulse my food processor to mix it up well. Next, I add the 10 tablespoons of butter, and if you leave the pieces really big, the first couple of pulses with your food processor makes it seem like it wants to just run away on your counter. It will mix in if you just let it mix. Now I want to show you this. It seems too dry at this point, and you can tell when you pick it up and it just wants to fall away. Now we will add the orange zest and a teaspoon of orange extract. And so far, this is the only wet ingredient in the shortbread dough. Once you mix this together, then you can determine whether or not you need an extra teaspoon of water. I wouldn't add more than an extra teaspoon or two to it, because the more water you add and the more you work the dough, the tougher it gets. So in this case, I could tell by pinching that it didn't want to stay together until I added a teaspoon of water to it. And then I could pinch it and it wanted to turn into a dough, and that's what I'm looking for. When it's done well, the dough reminds me of moist brown sugar. That's the consistency you're looking for before you push it together. And as soon as I start working it, you can see that it wants to turn into a thick dough for me. Don't work your dough very much. Push it together, cut it in half, work with 1/2 at a time, and only work it long enough to make it the right shape. You're trying to turn this into a log of dough that you can cut into cookie circles. So once you get each side shaped the way you want it, should be about 2 inches in diameter, then you're going to wrap each one in saran wrap or plastic wrap and make it nice and tight and put it in the refrigerator so that it'll get cold for you and you can slice it. Roll it up tight in the plastic wrap. Twist the ends closed, and then you're going to want to refrigerate this for 15 to 30 minutes before you try slicing your cookies. The colder the dough for shortbreads, the better they hold their shape. When you get your dough back out of the refrigerator, preheat your oven to 325 degrees for an electric oven, 340 degrees for a gas oven. We bought this cookie stamp in Ireland. It's not required for this recipe, but I just love this little clover cookie stamp. It's nice and heavy, and I like decorating shortbreads with it. I mark the dough at about 1/4 of an inch for each cookie, and I'm going to show you that up close. That lets me cut them all the same size, and they cook more evenly in the oven. Each log of dough makes about 12 cookies, or about 24 total for this recipe. I left mine in the fridge for about 30 minutes and the dough is nice and cold. They will also hold the clover pattern better if the dough is colder before it goes in the oven. So sometimes I'll even put the cut cookies back in the refrigerator on the cookie tray before I bake them. I want to show you the stamped pattern on the cookie. You can see it really well before they're baked. And what you're hoping for is that you can still see it a little bit after they're baked. And that definitely comes down to how cold the dough is before you put them in. I like sprinkling a little cane sugar over the top, and then right in the oven they go. Bake these for 22 to 24 minutes, and it will depend on your oven. Keep an eye on them. You want a little bit of browning around the edges, but you don't want the cookies brown. Oh my God, you should smell my house. These smell so good, and they'll keep for up to a week in an airtight container. Wishing you warm spiced holidays from Oma's Kitchen. Thank you for joining me in Oma's Kitchen. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll upload more tasty videos soon, and a special shout out to Moon Pie and Lil Bit. Till next time.
Oregano.